Good morning once again, everyone, and a very happy birthday to you, as it were. My name is Badri. I'm joined by Gita and Lorna and Bharati this morning, and this is perhaps the best way to celebrate Yogananda's birthday together in worship and inspiration and in joy. You know, just as we celebrate the Christmas season annually, it's so much more, of course, than the birth of a man 2,000 years ago in Bethlehem. So too is the birthday of Yogananda cause for a much greater celebration than a man born 132 years ago in Gorakhpur, India. And the real mission and light that is Yogananda, is still, relatively speaking, in its infancy in this world. But its reach is just as great and powerful as all the great masters who have come with a mission, a divine calling from God to share light, harmony, unity, and joy with all the world. Today's reading speaks to this desire of Yogananda's, this inspiration when he's visited by this divine light to say, I want to be one with thee. And as Swami Kriyananda writes, that we would do well to even meditate and receive a touch of this inspiration. And so it is that in the life of a master, even a touch has the power to transform us. As some of you know, a group of devotees, including some from Ananda Portland here, went to visit some of Yogananda's shrines in Southern California just a few months ago, in September last year. And at the gardens in Encinitas, this magical place where Yogananda lived, we were told a kind of amusing story. There was a man who lived locally in Encinitas there who was a grown man now, but whose grandfather had been a contemporary of Yogananda. And as a little boy himself, this man's grandfather had visited only once and had an encounter with Yogananda at the Encinitas Hermitage. It was an unusual encounter because he visited the grounds of Encinitas late one evening when it was dark out, and this little boy of 9 or 10 years old snuck onto the grounds before it was all fenced and quite as amazingly built up as it is now. And as many of you know, there's still to this day a swimming pool there. It's empty now, but in those days it was filled, and it was one of the only swimming pools, evidently, in the little town, beach town of Encinitas at the time. The boy sneaking onto the grounds, approached the pool one evening, perhaps with the intention to swim and goof around as little boys are wont to do. But little did he know that Yogananda was out that evening as well in the gardens. And he was in the shadows nearby. The boy did not see him. And the grandfather told this story to his son, that Yogananda, who had a kind of mischievous streak of his own since childhood, approached the little boy without his seeing and simply said one word, "Jump!" And the little boy was terrified, and he ran off and never encountered Yogananda again. And who can say what this little playful encounter was about? Maybe just some fun. But there's also a saying that I thought of in India as a deeper general meaning that says, even a moment in the company of a saint, of a true saint, is enough to bring one over the great ocean of delusion. And so again, this touch of the Guru, and who can say, a life such as Yogananda's, a spirit such as Yogananda's, reaches out with tendrils of light to touch millions upon millions of lives through writings and music and through work such as Self-Realization Fellowship and Ananda and so many others, and through all of us who in our hearts aspire, again, to be one with that light of Ishwar, of divine presence within us. And the Guru Yogananda is on some lofty plane, and as with Christ and the other masters, it can feel like a faraway inspiration at times, but this is not truly the case. Yogananda had a vision as a child of a dusty, busy marketplace that people were kind of going about their day, and he was observing this scene, and everyone's heads were kind of lowered to their tasks and to the busyness of this world, of this market setting. And Yogananda observed a man in this environment who, unlike all the others with their heads bowed, looked up to a distant mountain peak. And Yogananda lifted his visionary gaze and saw this beautiful garden atop this mountain, this divine kind of paradise scene. And he saw the man looking up to these heights. And then the man lowered his gaze again and muttered to himself, "But it's much, much too far." And Yogananda looked again at the man, at this scene. He looked up again at this distant mountain peak, and he thought, "It is very far." He said, "But I can get there if I put one foot in front of the other." And this inspiration, this vision, is a directive, is a promise that one foot surely treading in front of the other is the path, as with success in anything, to attaining the goal, the desire of our hearts. And again, to understand the life of Yogananda, or to even get a glimpse of that divine inspiration, is like seeing just a facet on a jewel, or perhaps a few facets that can reflect some beauty and light of that jewel. But it is impossible for us to comprehend the consciousness of a master, because we are working with a limited instrument. As Yogananda said to Swami Kriyananda when, in his presence for a time, Kriyananda was praying and in his meditations deeply, "Help me to love you as you love me. Help me to have that love, to love you as you love me." And he prayed earnestly this way. And then he had a brief encounter in person with Yogananda, who simply said, "How can a little cup hold the whole ocean?" So we have to enlarge the cup of our awareness, of our hearts, of our love, gradually one foot in front of the other to encompass the whole ocean. And Yogananda, as with all the saints and masters, had to take on a certain form in this world. As we know from his life, from his image, from his writings, we even have audio and video recording of Yogananda. We know that he was this tremendous, great soul with a delightful sense of humor, with the patience and love and kindness that was unparalleled in this world. But Yogananda said that of all the aspects of God, that there were three divine qualities which he embodied most of all. And those were evident in his life to those who knew him and to those even now that tune into him, as divine joy, wisdom, and love. And these are the qualities of every great saint and master and of our own souls. But Yogananda expressed these qualities especially in his life and in his work. And the quality of divine love, I was thinking not only of his students and his disciples, of course, who he showered this love upon, even though he could be stern when needed and disciplinary, that he always bestowed this divine love and friendship, but also to those more unusual encounters, such as the gunmen that approached him one evening on a city street, 3 men armed, who held him up and said, "Give us your money." And Yogananda simply said, "You can have my money." And he gave them his wallet, but he said, "I have something far greater that you can never take from me." And he looked at them, not only saying this powerful truth, but with such power and such love, if you can imagine, that these hardened men dropped their weapons and his money, and they fled in the power of this greatness. And on another occasion in New York City, when, as he often toured around the country, sharing this message of divine love, of self-realization, he chanted, as many of you know, this chant which he adapted from Guru Nanak from India, "O God, beautiful." And not only was he a strange character in those times, in his robes, with his hair, and with this music and this message, but he chanted this for not a few minutes, but an hour and a half in front of an audience of thousands. And they had told him, people won't tune into this message. They won't know what to do with this music. And they were captivated. Thousands of people were there, held by the spell of Yogananda's love and by this music and this expression. And many people were changed and healed and uplifted in a divine capacity that night. But one man, again, this was some sort of an evil man, we don't know his history, approached Yogananda afterwards, again with a gun in his hand, and he threw down his weapon, and he said, I don't know what it is you've done to me. I could kill you for what you've done, but I can't go back to that way of life anymore. And so again, we see the power and the love of one such as Yogananda in an unusual way. One more story, when he was approached, this time by a drunkard. This one wasn't armed, but in his inebriation saw Yogananda again in this unusual state with his robes and his long hair, and recognized perhaps some divine quality there. And he said in his drunkenness, "Hello there, Jesus Christ." And Yogananda let him approach, and he said, "Come here, I have something for you." And he blessed the man with the touch of his divine love. And again, with some level of receptivity, the man was shocked for a moment out of his drunkenness. And he said, "What are you drinking?" Say. And Yogananda said, with his characteristic humor, "It has a lot of kick in it." But everywhere he went, that he carried this message of divine love, appropriate to every individual, to every circumstance, not only preaching or sharing, but living this message of divine love and self-realization, of divine joy and wisdom. And again, to understand the Master is only to understand a little bit of his consciousness. But as Swami Kriyananda gives the example of drilling through a thick sheet of ice, that even to apply sufficient pressure at one point can break through into the waters below. And so it is that even to penetrate one aspect of a master in meditation, in living our own lives, in the presence of the Guru, within ourselves, is enough to expand step by step our own consciousness, to be like the Himalayan yogis, to be like one with that divine light. And again, there are practical ways as well as divine ways to do this. But this love of Yogananda is expressed. I was thinking of all of his early stories and Yogananda's lessons. One of my very favorite is the story of the Buddha and the courtesan. The Buddha was a divine master, of course, himself, and he was with his disciples beneath a tree when he was approached by a courtesan, a beautiful woman who, recognizing, again, on some level, this divine beauty of the Buddha in this case, she approached him and threw herself upon him. And the disciples around the Buddha were somewhat horrified by this, and more so by her words. She said, "Oh, my beloved, I love you. Won't you embrace me, touch me?" And again, to their horror, the Buddha embraced this beautiful woman. And they were all monastics, of course. And he said, "I do love you too, my beloved, but don't touch me now." He said, "I will come and embrace you, and I will touch you later." And the disciples, again, were confused and troubled by this, but he sent her away. And quite a while passed, and they sort of forgot about this encounter, but the Buddha did not. And a couple of years later, again, meditating with the disciples, the Buddha suddenly stirred and said, "My beloved is calling me, and she needs me now." And the disciples followed after him as he went to the same tree, the place where he had met the woman, and she was there again, but she was no longer beautiful and enchanting. She was covered in sores of smallpox and ravaged by disease. And he picked her up, to, again, the disciples' horror, and he held her, and he said, "Now I've come to you, my beloved. Now I will hold you and embrace you." And she was healed by his divine touch, and that touch of divine love. And this is the true love of the Master, which knows us better than we know ourselves, which understands us and penetrates into our heart of hearts to banish our delusion and to awaken us in that divine love. And as it says in the reading, that there's a divine vision, which we don't necessarily have the full picture of, that there's a greater message of divine love that the Guru brings to us, and that for those who have ears to hear it and to tune into it, that we can grow spiritually through leaps and bounds by the Guru's grace. And it can take many forms. In the life of many disciples of Yogananda, they couldn't have been more different. If you look at his own contemporary disciples, at his life, Yogananda had devoted followers and disciples, many, but just a few of which, one was a famous opera singer, Amelita Gallicurci. One student was the president of Mexico, Emilio Portes Gil. Swami Kriyananda, of course, was a devoted student and follower who was banished from his organization and went on to create Ananda and share his message with thousands, each expressing it in their own way. Another man, Dr. George Gay, wasn't a doctor at all, but Yogananda said, you should have a title like master or doctor. And he was quite frankly a crazy person, but he was a saint. He was dressed all disheveled. He lived a life of obscurity, and many miracles happened around him. And he lived in shambles, but he was a great saint, and Master wanted him to live a life of obscurity. He said, Dr. George, no one can know who you truly are. And so, again, Dr. Lewis, he was a doctor, was a devoted follower of Master, and on and on and on the lives of these different disciples. There's one more disciple I want to share with you, a couple of accounts from the life of Peggy Dietz. She was a disciple who found Yogananda somewhere in the middle of her life, and was a very deeply spiritual woman since her childhood. She had many mystical experiences, including out-of-body experiences and things. And when she found Yogananda, she had been praying deeply to God for many years, in fact, that nothing can ever come between us, God. Spirit, nothing can ever come between us. And she said she went out for a walk one day, and she was thinking about and praying this way, and she suddenly struck her in her own words. She said, I've been dictating to God. I've been telling God how this works. And she said, please forgive me, Lord. Send me guidance. If necessary, send me a guide. And that very day she went home. Strange circumstances, she picked up some piece of garbage off the floor and threw it in the trash. She said, I knew I had to go after that. She pulled it out of the trash and wadded it up, unwadded this piece of paper, and it said, Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. She looked up the book, she found a copy of it, and she started to devour this book hungrily with these spiritual lessons. That very same day, she was called by a friend, another spiritual woman, she said, a very psychic woman. She said, I've met somebody that I feel you have to meet. You must come to La Jolla at once. She lived in Southern California too. She said, I can't right now. I'm totally absorbed in this book. She said, the man's name is Paramahansa Yogananda. She said, I'll be right there. She raced down to La Jolla, California. She got a speeding ticket on the way down. She went to Yogananda's lecture with her friend. Her friend said, I think he's going to want to speak to you. I don't know why, but you have to stay afterwards. She did speak to Yogananda afterwards, who recognized her. And he said in an interview with her, I can teach you many things, Peggy. I can teach you how to leave your body at will. She said, I can already do that. I'm trying to stay in my body. He said, I can show you how to do that and many more things as well that you can't learn from books. And he said, will you come and live at Mount Washington with me? And she said, in her own recollection, a little foolishly, she said, I'll have to think about that. Yogananda said, there's a job for you now that you can do and a place for you to stay. I don't know if it'll be there much longer if you don't come now. She said, God will keep it for me if he wants it. So a short while later, she came to her senses, and she did go to Mount Washington. The day before she went, she grew very ill. She was to meet Yogananda the next day. She lay in bed that night with the high fever, and she was visited by the spirit of Yogananda in person. She said, many spirits had come to me before in my life, but never like this. he placed his hand on her forehead, and she was healed. She was well. She went to visit him the next day, and he said, I came to you last night, didn't I? And she stayed with him there at Mount Washington for many years and served him in unusual ways. Because she was such a deeply spiritual woman already, he was trying to ground her. He was trying to teach her to be more in this world. And he said, I want you to go to parties and social events for me. She said, I don't want to go to those places. He said, would you do it for God and Guru? She said, when you put it like that, I will. So she went to these things, and she talked a little bit about yoga, Kriya Yoga, and things for people that were interested. And she was his driver. She would drive him around. So she drove him around Los Angeles, and he stopped one time, and he said, what's that building there? And she said, I don't know, Master. And he got out, and he went inside there. A few minutes later, he came out. He said, it's the most beautiful bar they're building in there. He said, you should see it, all this inlaid wood, and it's just gorgeous. And she thought, why is he doing this to me? So she would drive him around. But again, he was teaching her to be in this world with her deeply spiritual nature. And when she would ask him about Kriya Yoga and the higher techniques, he would show her photographs of his family and friends. And he said, doesn't my brother look like Cary Grant? And gradually she grew to understand that the Guru was working with her just as he works with all of us in the way that is appropriate to our own nature. And this is a lesson of divine love, of working with the Guru, who is our own higher self, is that the circumstances of our life, of our spiritual search, of our karma, of our relationships, everything is given to us as an exact, necessary lesson of divine love from the Guru, if we accept that channel of God's will, of God's grace into our lives. And the question is not so much who is the Guru, this great consciousness of divine light that is expressed through these masters, but who are we in relationship to the Guru? And the word or the concept of discipleship is that I myself, that you yourself are a disciple of the Guru, of life, of God, that I am seeking the divine light through this channel called the Guru, but which is me, which is my own self, which is everything and everywhere. But the divine requires instruments in all of nature, in humankind, and therefore I seek God through the Guru, through this example of Paramahansa Yogananda or Jesus Christ or whatever form I hold dearest, but that only through this divinely appointed medium can I finally summit that mountain and realize God. And just to share with you finally a couple of practical ways which Yogananda shared to bring the Guru's presence more tangibly into our life and to realize this. He said the fastest way to make spiritual progress is simply to keep our attention at the point between the eyebrows all the time. Not only in meditation, which we know, but in activity, to always focus here. I know one person who put hot sauce on their forehead, which I don't necessarily recommend. Another friend, whenever we see each other, kind of secret agent style, we'd give. But to always keep our attention uplifted, our awareness heightened, and to focus on this chakra, on the spiritual eye, has tremendous power. Just as we were meditating briefly, when we sit in stillness, to call deeply to God in the form of the Guru at the spiritual eye, to look at his image, to visualize his eyes and the power there, and to call, reveal thyself, or introduce me to God, and then to listen in the receiving center, as Yogananda said, of the heart, for the response, for that divine love, that through our receptivity, through our will, and then our receptivity, that we can make tremendous spiritual progress. And as Yogananda said, when a disciple asked him, what will we all do? What will we all do when you're gone? And he said, to those who think me near, I will be near. On another occasion, as many of you know, he said, when I am gone, only love can take my place. And so to think the Guru near and to hold this divine love in our hearts is the secret to making that journey step by step of divine realization. I'll just close by sharing with you this beautiful poem of Paramahansa Yogananda's which many of you know, when I am only a dream. And just close your eyes and feel, as you listen to these words of the Guru, that his presence is within you and all around you. When I am only a dream, I come to tell you all of him and the way to encase him in your bosom, and of the discipline which brings his grace. To those of you who have asked me to guide you to my beloved's silently talking mind, or speak to you through a gentle, significant glance, or whisper to you through my love, or loudly dissuade you when you stray away from him. But when I shall become only a memory, or a mental image, or silently speaking voice, when no earthly call will ever reveal my whereabouts in unplumbed space, when no shallow entreaty or stern stentorian command will bring an answer from me, I will smile in your mind when you are right, and when you are wrong, I will weep through my eyes, dimly peering at you in the dark, and weep through your eyes, perchance. And I will whisper to you through your conscience, and I will reason with you through your reason, and I will love through your love. When you are no longer able to talk to me, read my whispers of eternity. Eternally through that, I will talk to you. Unknown, I will walk by your side and guard you with invisible arms. And as soon as you know my beloved and hear his voice in silence, you will know me again more tangibly than you knew me in this earth plane. And yet, when I am only a dream to you, I will come to remind you that you too are not but a dream of my heavenly beloved. And when you know you are a dream, as I know now, we will all be ever awake in him. Happy Master's birthday, everyone. We've got one more song to share with you.